Thank you everyone for coming. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to be on stage introducing a good friend of mine, Sai, who has been doing a lot of work. He comes from San Francisco, where we do a lot of work together in a hackerspace called Noisebridge. And among other things, the talk that he's given tonight is one example of some of the stuff that he works in, but he also does a lot of things like massage and posture, and he's even a developer on the side. So this man is really smart, and he's actually spoken about this exact topic at Noisebridge several times, and people have shown a lot of interest.
In 5 minutes, though.
Yeah. You've done several talks in 5 minutes.
That's true.
Yeah. 5-minute talks are actually really hard to do. So,
but fun.
Yeah. So everything that Sai has done has been very fascinating. He's opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I think that everyone here is going to be at least somewhat enlightened, or at least amused by some of the things he has to say. He is one of my favorite speakers, so I'd like everyone to give a round of applause for Sai.
Thank you very much. Right. So like I said, if you have short questions during the talk, long things, wait until later. Also, I have a paper in the proceedings. It's also online, so please read it. It's good. It covers a lot of material that I do not have the time for in this talk. This talk is mostly going to be applied demonstration and not so much linguistic theory. I had to cut out a lot of stuff to be able to fit it in time, and even so, I'm going to be going fairly fast. And all of this is Creative Commons, of course, so do stuff with it and tell me about it. That's about what we're doing. Most of the time that we're going to spend here is on actually making a very, very small language. But if you want to know more, if you want to expand it, etc., come to the workshop, which is right after this. So, what is a conlang? A conlang is a language that people make up. Usually what we mean by this is a language that has its own grammar, its own vocabulary, and that humans can use to talk to each other about more or less anything, just like any other natural language. We're not talking about like a language game like Pig Latin or Löffelsprache, and it's not like a programming language, it's not jargon like hackish or whatever. It's a real language. So what kinds of conlangs are there? The most common kind of conlang is an art lang. The most high-profile ones are used in novels or films or games and so forth. But usually it's just people who want to make a language for themselves. So I'm sure you all know people do all sorts of things for just the personal fulfillment or artistic expression. For some people it's painting, some people make model railroads, some people make secure decentralized botnets. Art langers are the same, but they make languages. So, we're going to play a game. This talk is a participatory talk, and in a few minutes I'm going to ask you to actually use your brains a little. So, to get everyone warmed up, if you think you know the answer, just shout it out. By the way, if you give an answer that I use, either here or later in the talk, come up to me afterwards and you can get a sticker. Bribes always help. And yes, it's the same one that's on my laptop. Incidentally, the image on the sticker is the Conlang flag. It's the Tower of Babel against a rising sun, because if any of you know the Babel story from the Bible, it is when God got pissed that all the humans were getting uppity and made us talk a bunch of new languages, so we thought it was kind of appropriate for us. Anyway, so the first question is everyone ready? Yes. Thank you. That was a good one. So, does anyone recognize this? Ellen sila lumen umentielvo is what it says. Yes, Quenya. This is Tolkien's Elvish language, Quenya. It's probably the most prototypical pretty art lang, but everyone has a different aesthetic, really. Sometimes they're very different. Klingon, for example, sounds really harsh and is fairly linguistically weird. Duritok doesn't even have any voiced sounds or vowels. It's got sounds like and but these are all still art langs because they're made to fit an aesthetic concept. Auxlangs, by contrast, are used by people who want a single neutral language that'll be easy for everyone to learn and not as imperialist as just making everyone learn English, which is what I'm doing now. They're far more popular to actually speak than Artlings, because Artlingers don't really care that much about getting other people to use their language. They just make it for themselves. There's a drawback, of course, which is since Augslangs can only really succeed if everybody adopts them, there can only be one. And this used to cause a lot of flame wars, but fortunately the Augslingers have mostly settled down into a status quo nowadays. So, La abel oi havas felon, sed ilin ne taugas por karesi. What? Esperanto. Yes, Esperanto. It's not the oldest, that would be Edo perhaps, and it's definitely not the best designed Augslang, sorry. But it is by far the most popular. Other Augslangs have tried to improve upon it. They use a simpler writing system without little hot checks and whatnot. They take vocabulary from parts of the world that aren't in Europe, and so forth. But really, Augslang has been completely dominated by Esperanto. It's by far much, much more popular than anything else. Ngelangs, however, are kind of weird. They're really the hacker version of a Conlang. It's kind of hard to generalize what they are overall, because they're all doing something different, and they all do something that has fairly radical effects on the language. Sometimes people make it because the creator wants to fix something in a natural language from their perspective. Some are just sort of thought experiments or philosophical challenges, and some are just for the challenge of making something that's really weird. Here's one. Anyone recognize that? Lojban, yes. So in English, a pretty little girl's school could mean about 10 different things. In Lojban, you can be very specific about which one you want. This one happens to mean a small and pretty school for girls, as opposed to, for example, a school belonging to a somewhat small girl, which is, again, a pretty little girl's school. There's a trade-off, of course. It's more precise, but it's also kind of complex. Anyway, speaking of Lojban, so, Florian and Timo, stand up. Come on, stand up. If you want to learn Lojban, talk to those guys. They're running a workshop tomorrow. So, I'm definitely a hacker. I'm an Ngelanger. One of the things I'm working on with my partner Alex Fink is a language that's spoken by two people using finger presses. So zoom into my hands. Here is an example. Ready? Sorry. Everyone got that? Probably not. That means, may your conlang break your mind. It's part of a Christmas card that we sent out recently, because the community had a big Christmas card exchange, and that was part of our contribution. Anyway, if you want to know exactly what that feels like, you can talk to me later, and I'll demo it for you. The other thing that I'm really interested in is non-linear writing systems. This is Skylar Devine's OWI. The example here is the biblical story of the Tower of Babel again. If you think of standard writing systems, they're basically arrays of arbitrary symbols. They don't really use the fact that the medium is two-dimensional in any way. Nonlinear writing systems like this are more like graphs. They use the surface and the medium in an inherent way to express the grammar, and they try to optimize for how the writing system itself could work instead of just being a transcription of speech. Anyway, talk to me later or go look at the OWI site. It's pretty good. So how do you actually make a language? It's kind of an intimidating thing, right? Usually you'll have a goal in mind when you start. But it's useful to spend a little time to think of what exactly you're trying to do. Do you just want to name your D&D character? Do you want to translate Hamlet from the original Klingon? What do you want it to sound like? What is the culture of those speakers? Is it going to have any